this thing on? Yeah. I think so. There you go. Alrighty. All right. Shabbat Shalom. Good evening, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
And thanks for coming out for our Slichot service, officially kicking off the high holiday season tonight. We also have some folks tuned in on Facebook, so welcome, good evening as well. Good to have you. Many folks have asked me, Rabbi, what actually is Slichot? You know, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, you know, of course we know all that about, but what is Slichot all about? So Slichot, the word literally means forgiveness. It's also the name for a category of prayers that we say during the holidays, particularly during Yom Kippur, prayers asking for forgiveness. That's what Slichot is the plural, actually means. And what happens is, before the high holidays start, Ashkenazim begin usually the Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah. Since Rosh Hashanah falls so early in the week, we actually move to the week up earlier, so we actually have more time to get ourselves in that mental headspace. Sephardim and some folks of the Edot HaMizrach, the Mizrahi Eastern Jews, actually begin at the beginning of Elul, so they have a full month of Slichot there. So it's one of the differences in custom among the Jewish communities. But as for the most part Ashkenazi Jews here, we're going with the Shabbat before for this service. And also what has become customary, not only to get ourselves in the mindset of the high holidays, it's also about getting literally the physical space in the high holidays space, which means we're gonna later doing our service for Slichot, we're gonna be changing the Torah mantles and the covers and the tablecloths to white, the liturgical color for the high holiday season. Also in terms of pureness, you know, forgiveness, you know, some folks during the season and also Yom Kippur actually wear a kittel. Kantor's gonna be putting his on later on. Kittel is a German word literally like for like a frock, for like a little cloth piece. It's actually the cloth actually eventually gonna get buried then. So in these days, on the high holidays, we are becoming very aware of our mortality, and so some folks also symbolically include that by wearing not only white, but some even were putting on that kittel. So yeah, just as a few words of background to that. And before we move into the actual service, it's still a bit early. We're going to be doing Havdalah in a little while, the separation between Shabbat and the new week. And with that, also the service of Slichot and the changing of the cover. Since they're going to be outside, we're going to be changing one cover for pretty much, symbolically for all of them. And the other ones will be changed inside at a different point. So yeah, I want to kick us off with a text study that I put together. As I mentioned, it's all about reflection, looking inside ourselves, not only what the last year has been all about, but also where we might have missed the mark, or how can we be a better person in the year to come. And the study that I put together here, I call it Desire as a Spiritual Practice. In other words, pretty much it sounds very Buddhist kind of piece, like how can we let go of desire, that kind of piece. But actually Judaism has a lot to say on this regard as well. Many of them come either from the Hasidic tradition or from the Musa tradition. Musa is a movement that was looking inside ourselves. How can we improve as ethical, moral human beings? And also, how can we be more in the moment, be more grateful? Today we would call that kind of practice mindfulness. How can we really be there, present, and actually be in the moment? So I put some quotes together for this, and also looking forward to having you guys chime in as well. So this is going to be a discussion. It's not just going to me talking. So please feel free to chime in. The same goes for folks who are tuned in from afar. Please feel free to put your comments and thoughts into the message board or the chat, so we can also have your voices heard for this as well.
And there's, I believe you, if you're online, that there is a way to.
Oh yes, thank you for specifying.
Sure.
Yes, so I put together a source sheet, so all the folks here are gonna have one physical copy of the sheet. Everybody has one? All right, good. And this one also got put on the Temple Facebook page, so you have a way of actually, if you're watching us from afar, to also download this PDF, so you will also be able to see the text. We're gonna be reading the text out loud, so we're also gonna be hearing it. But just in case you want to get the visual, I'm a very visual person. It always helps me to actually see something in front of me. So So you have the option of doing this as well. Okay. So what I wanted to start up is a text. This is from Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mezrich. He's a famous Maggid. Technically means from Haggadah. It's a storyteller. So he's one of the Hasidic masters, and he talks very often in terms of images, or going back to the ancient practice of parables. And this first part here that I have is actually one of those parables. I'm wondering if somebody were to read from the kahal here, would people hear it? I'm not quite sure. Usually I would have, you chime, if you have your folks chime in. In this case, let me just go over the texts so to make sure the folks at home also will be able to hear it. Sometimes a man comes from the king with gestures of love. One who's foolish takes pleasure in and amuses himself with the messenger, because he hears from him words of love. But one who is wise and knows that the essence is the will of the king and his love says, "What good is it to take pleasure speaking with the messenger? I will go to the essence of the pleasure and love." And he goes to the king and does not pay attention to the messenger. Thus with everything which comes to a person, whether love or fear, he should go to the king, which is the Holy One, blessed be he, and raise everything above. Whether some external fear comes to him, or damage, God forbid, or whether he encounters some joy or pleasure, everything should be raised on high to the supernal king. And he should not be like the fool who takes pleasure and amuses himself, and eats and drinks, and spends time with the messenger sent from the king, and thus becomes distracted, and forgets that the king sent for him. Not so the wise man with his eyes in his head. Therefore a person must be very settled in his service of the Holy One, blessed be God. So that was a long quote. Let's actually see and unpack what is happening here. So we have this parable, this comparison that's talking in images about a king, and the king sending out gestures of love. When we're looking at that, when we talk about who's the king, that's a very common image, very common trope in Jewish parables. When we're talking about the king, who's the king? Adonai, God, exactly. Good to be the king, but in this case, we're talking about literally God as the king, which is very appropriate for this season because Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, we invoke God as both our parent and our sovereign, our king, our ruler during this high holiday season. And what is it that the king does? The king sends somebody out, a messenger. What does the messenger stand for in this tale here? Yeah? To carry the message of the king, very good. And how does this messenger manifest itself? Again, we're talking about in parables, so we're not talking about a physical person, we're talking about something symbolically here. What is it that goes out from the king to the people?
A person, someone from the congregation who goes out.
Oh, okay, that would be very good. That would be taken it quite literally in sense, because mostly a messenger or shaliach. Shlichim these days, when you hear the term shlachim, those are these emissaries that usually come from Israel. These youngins, who just finished the army and being sent into the Jewish communities worldwide. That would be a very contemporary read of the shlichim, the messengers, as in a person. But here we're talking about something symbolic. Herb.
I think, from as near as I can see, what we're dealing with is messages.
Yeah.
Are the good and bad things that happen to us.
Okay, so we're taking it to the level of something symbolical. The messages themselves are the things that happen to us. So.
As with Job, sometimes good.
Okay. And as mentioned, as with Job, it can be go either way. What in this case, in this parable here, what is the message though? It's actually coming specifically from one angle. Is it a positive or negative piece? It says the people taking enjoying time with the messenger. If it's a negative pieces, I don't think people would be too crazy about dwelling on those kind of things. So the messenger in this case is literally the enjoyment that we have in the world, happiness, gladness. If we look at the text, we're talking about it's good for people to eat and drink, enjoy ourselves. So ultimately, this is pretty much saying God is giving us the opportunity to enjoy ourselves in the world, to also engage in the physical things, and also in the parts that give us pleasure and enjoyment. For those who were there last night for Shabbat services, remember the sister act reference literally. It's all also we are supposed to be joyful. It's part of our life, and not to descend into some ascetic, denying ourselves anything that is pleasurable in the world. All right, so this is the image that we have here, and it's raising a concern though. What happens when a person only gets concerned with the messenger? What happens in this case? That's what Rabbi Dov Ber is ultimately going for. What happens if you engage only with messenger? You get disconnected from the source. Very good. And as in Judaism, we have pretty much this immediate direct connection. There's no intermediary there. Other religious traditions have different setups for this. But one actually of the wonderful things about Judaism is we have direct access to God. We don't have this intermediary level. So what he's reminding us, we are supposed to ultimately go for the source. We ultimately connect to the King, to God directly. And in what way, according to him, would that take shape? What does that look like? Yes. Tshuva, return. Guess what? That's the theme for this season or something. What a coincidence. Very good. So ultimately, we are also supposed to engage the messenger, and enjoy ourselves in the world and in all that it has to offer us. But at the same time, we should always be aware of the presence of the King, who is ultimately behind all that and who's giving this as a gift. So we should not make the messenger into the king, but rather always be aware of God's presence behind that also. Very good. And I have another quote. The second part here, I have another quote of Rabbi Dov Ber. This comes from a different source of his collections. Let me read this one to you guys. Shiviti Adonai lelegdi tamid. I have set God before me at all times. This is a famous quote from a psalm. Very often it's on arks, in other synagogues. Shiviti is an expression of hishtavut, equanimity. No matter what happens, whether people praise or shame you, and so too with anything else, it shall all be the same to you. With this perspective, the Yetzer Hara is entirely removed from you. Whatever may happen, say that it comes from the Holy One, blessed be God, and if it is proper in God's eyes. Your motives shall altogether be for the sake of heaven, and as for yourself, nothing shall make any difference. This is equanimity at a very high level. All right, so this is an idea. What do we make of this? I see a hand, yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a beautiful image. We're talking. We just heard about how very often people judge others, and not to judge others unless you've walked in their shoes. So also having a sort of compassion. I think that's ultimately what this is: having empathy and having compassion for others. What do you for this? That's beautiful. Thank you. He actually takes, not just also for clarified terms, Yetzer Hara. What is the Yetzer Hara? Just so we know what we're talking about here. Yeah, the inclination towards bad. It's pretty much temptations that we might eat into. That urge that we carry in ourselves. Very good. And what is it? In order to get rid of this Yetzer Hara, the inclinations to do not so great things. How can we get a handle on this, according to Rabbi Dov Ber here? Yeah.
It makes me think of keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole.
Keep your eye on the donut, not on the hole. I haven't heard that one yet. Interesting.
As you wander on through life, my friend, whatever be your goal, keep your eye upon the donut and not upon the hole.
Whatever be your goal in life, keep your eye on the hole, on the donut, not the. Oh my! Interesting. Do you know where that is from? I haven't heard that one. That's
I'll have to look it up. I'll let you know.
Thanks for looking it up. I appreciate that. Wow. So what does that make? These donut holes you can get at Dunkin'. Is that a theological statement? I was wondering. It's like, wait a second. Very good, nice. So ultimately, keeping our eyes on the prize. What is it ultimately all about? Which connects with the first part that we mentioned. Not in get blast with the messenger, but also look towards the King behind. But also how realistic or how effective do you think is that kind of approach? Can we reach that kind of level of equanimity? Literally means be of literally of balanced heart. That's literally what it means. Equum like that, and animum is the heart. To literally be so balanced and pretty much not letting anything get to you, that pretty much keeps you there. How realistic is that? I see hand. Yes. Yeah. We live in a democracy, gives a lot of freedom. Uh huh. Mhm. Mhm. Oh, I see. Mhm. So pretty much in the summer, and just to summarize briefly for folks who couldn't hear this, pretty much mentioned being in a democracy, we actually have a multiplicity of opinions and leaders to look out to and to decide ourselves what is wise, what is foolish. And you contrast that to places that are autocratic systems where there's only like one official opinion that's being put out there, and it's like it's either that or nothing else really as an opportunity. So actually, pretty much we having an opportunity to choose and make our choices, which in some places or countries you could not. Thank you. Herb, I see your hand. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're told here that the Yetzer Hara,
Yeah.
the evil inclination or the temptation towards evil, bad behavior, comes from caring about other people
Mm.
rather than caring about God. If you set God before us and
Yeah.
don't care what other people think, then we won't be led astray.
That's a beautiful reading. I like that one. Yes.
Yet we also say in Yiddish, life is with people. We
Yeah.
cannot live. Jews don't live on a mountaintop with only God in front of them. They live surrounded by people, and generally speaking, that is encouraged. So this seems, in some ways, this seems more Zen Buddhist than
Remember what I mentioned before, like at the beginning, like, about like Buddhism. It has a very similar kind of piece, reaching this level of pretty much letting go of desires. So just to summarize what Herb was saying, that life is with people. We always have we always live in interaction with others, and the way we also at times can make ourselves dependent from them or to their opinion of ourselves. So pretty much if you contrast that to actually keeping God in mind and not living our lives to other people, that actually also will help us to break free from the circle. But at the same time also we live with people, so we need to find or negotiate some kind of way of doing that, because we're also a social animal, a social creature. So in order to have that and not turn into ascetics. Wow, the Sister Act piece from last night is really running through this whole Shabbat. I'm really happy about that. That's awesome. All right. So, as you mentioned before, there's some compromises that are in order to make this work. And I have another comment that's looking, guess what, exactly into this direction, into different models of how can we approach that and how can we go about that. This is Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen Rabinowitz of Lublin. So this is from a 19th century Poland rabbi. And let me see what he has to say. The verse, those who are lost in the land of Assyria and those who are exiled in the land of Egypt, from Isaiah, refers to two ways to be lost in imagination. The first is to be engrossed in the continuous business of this world, such as accumulating wealth or pursuing other desires, seeking power and honor or jealousy and triumph. The heart becomes so filled that it is impossible to remember God at all. When one is totally engrossed, then one is lost. The Assyrian reader Sennacherib befuddled the whole world with this continuous scattering of people. Those who are exiled are those who are slothfully exiled in imaginations and desolation, emptiness and vanity, which is Egypt, the nakedness of the world, without any work or effort. In contrast, the land of Israel requires work and prayer, and wherein one cannot lose oneself in relaxation. The principle of the land of Israel is not to be lost in imaginations of tranquility, but to know that a person was born to work with effort, The sanctity of the temple is to know that one should totally serve God and not only work at any physical or worldly activity. There's a lot here. Let's unpack this one as well. So we're going back to a parable here, or rather, like actually more like kind of a midrash. He's taken a verse from the Bible. This is from the prophet Isaiah. Those who are lost in the land of Assyria, and those who are exiled in the land of Egypt. So some background, so now that we're on the same page for this. Assyria was an ancient power, like a neighboring Israel, like next to Babylonia, and they eventually would attack Israel and destroy the northern kingdom. That would what would happen at one point, and would bring some people into exile. And the land of Egypt, of course, everything of the story of the Exodus, where the Israelites were enslaved. So we have these two powers, that the Israelites were neighbors with, and there was constant, military campaigns and other things going on between those. He's using them again in the sense of a parable. We're not supposed to walk in the ways of Assyria or the ways of the land of Egypt. According to him, what is Assyria symbolizing here? What is the way of the way of Assyria? What happens if you become too much like them, according to Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen?
You forget God.
You forget God, exactly. So what are the things ultimately, that happen, that we become engrossed with, or involved with, if that they're not God? Power, wealth, possessions. So pretty much all kinds of things. Material pieces, and also a lot of them are actually also mental pieces, if you're striving for power, if you're striving for honor and jealousy, those are all things that can literally move us out of the sphere from being relatable, being literally underground. It's trying to raise yourself up above others. That idea here. So we become so full of ourselves that it's pretty much not possible no longer to see God, according to him, and that's the way of Assyria. And the scattering of people, what he mentioned is, what they did back then in order to literally break down, the identity of people, they would literally take them, the exiles, and literally put a few in this province, a few in this province, this province. So literally pretty much hoping that they would pretty much disintegrate there. If they were to keep them in one place, it's a lot easier for people to maintain one shared strong identity. So that was something that the Assyrians did. So literally by spreading us out, we ultimately lose ourselves, is what he teaches. That would be the way of Assyria. And the other way, as a model that people might go after or follow, is the way of Egypt. And what does Egypt symbolize, not only in our tradition, but also according to Rabbi Tzadok? Egypt, first thing coming up is luxury. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. The Egyptians were massive. The Nile pretty much granted them a lot of wealth. The land was very fruitful, and they had a lot of high technology for the time. They were very wealthy place, and there was a lot of luxury. Think about the pyramids, and just think about how much, they would give their dead in there, and some of the scenes, of the palaces. So absolutely, so luxury is a big part, that goes with Egypt. What else? Oh, absolutely. Also, the theological aspects that are there, which are going pretty much absolutely against what Judaism is. Yes, and have you prepared before? A caste system also, yeah, that we have really strong social differences between different groups of people. The ruling class, and the workers, there would be quite some divide between those. And also, again, we read the story of the Israelite slaves in Egypt. So there's definitely the stain of your human lives and making other people your servants or your slaves even. Very good. So in this case, I also mentioned desolation, emptiness, vanity. So this goes back more to the worldly things, luxury, as you mentioned, luxury and other pieces. So Assyria has the mental hubris part, trying to lift yourself up above others, and the other way you have pretty much all the engaging in all kinds of worldly affairs and luxuries and all kind of things that are ultimately empty, but they're pleasant, and that's why a lot of people engage in them. Nice. Yes.
Could it also be a reference to the fact that the Egyptians believed you can't take it with you?
Oh, interesting, reference to the Egyptians, you can take it with you actually and stuff. This is actually a very good part because literally, yeah, that's why the idea was literally the tombs are pretty much decorated the same way how you wanted to pretty much spend eternity. It's the, what do you call it, the Crate and Barrel catalog, whatever, for the great beyond, that kind of a piece, no, absolutely. This is a very good point. So ultimately, pretty much, losing sight of the bigger picture, thinking that it's also gonna carry over there. That's a good point. I like it. And as here we are being offered a third way in that. And which way is that? We have Assyria, we have Egypt. What's the third way that he is proposing? Exactly, the way of the land of Israel. By the way, we're talking about the land of Israel here. We're talking about the way of the Jewish way, the way of the peace. We're not necessarily talking about the physical place. But again, Assyria is a physical place. Egypt is too. So pretty much the third way is the Jewish way of doing things. And what is it that that way is supposed to look like, or how can that be helpful according to him? What is the way of Israel? To be industrious? Yes? Oh, okay. Okay, very good. So I was talking about the term avodah, like the service, not only the sacrificial service from ancient times, but also the service of the heart, avodah shebalev. So that ultimately also comes to our attitude: how do we worship God? Nice. So we have industriousness, we have worship. Yes. Oh, Nina, thank you. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, I see. Mm-hmm. Very good. So what Nina just mentioned is that pretty much for our way is to pretty much to pretty much put the ego aside and actually see ourselves, find our spot in the greater scheme of things. So really find that middle position there. Very good. And yes, Kenta.
Also, that the Avodah, this work that we talk about, begins like in Elul for our returning and our thinking about Teshuvah and standing and thinking of God in front of us all the time. That takes work, and so this work in the land of Israel is not ujate mayim and the forming of the land, but to me that prayer and work is about really sitting down with yourself and doing the work.
Exactly, but kind of mentioned pretty much as also part not that our work is not just physical, like in the land. I think the pioneers what have make the desert bloom, that kind of piece, but it's also our spiritual work that we're doing, and we need to remind ourselves pretty much to have God in front of us and to live our lives accordingly. Yes, Joel. From the sun, protection of the sun. It's all good. Very good. So it's ultimately pretty much trying to find this balance. The first time when I read this piece, it's like we have work and prayer. It's like this is ora et labora. That sounds like very like Luther-like in pieces here. But ultimately, the idea is literally to find that middle way. On the one hand, we are engaging in the world. This is the work that we're doing, and we partake in that. Think of the messenger. But at the same time, we always supposed to do so with the bigger picture, our place in the world, our egos in check, and also beware of the presence of God there. So find that middle road. The golden middle road, as Maimonides would call it. So, yeah, very good. If you want to turn the sheet around, I have a few more commentaries. These are the first one is Rabbi Moshe Cordovero from Safed, Tzfat in Spain. This is part from the Zohar. So this from the mystical traditions that we have in Judaism. Desire is a corporeal act. However, from the corporeal, one can enter the spiritual. From the corporeal heart, there will be aroused desire, and the soul and intellect will cleave that desire to God. And concerning this, they said that one who does not know the yearning for a partner is not able to yearn for and desire God. For from the desiring and yearning of the heart, he separates out of this desire and yearning and cleaves it to God. Quote, and the compassionate one desires the heart. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on here. This is a very intense reading. As you mentioned, also we have Kabbalah Shabbat, where we also have the spiritual, the mystical elements here. How can we welcome in the Shabbat bride, the personified Shabbat that comes in? This goes in a very similar direction, and a lot of the love and yearning is something that comes up a lot in Kabbalah. Always trying to bring two sides, two spheres together to form one big whole. And according to him, what is it ultimately that we need in order to, if you want to be close to God, what is it that we actually need to do? according to this quote from the Zohar here. Meditation is one piece, yep, but actually it's a very concrete, it's a very yes.
You gotta get married.
Okay, that's one way of putting it. Get married. It's like that's a very nice. That's a very that's a very classical Jewish kind of a way and stuff. Okay, and what happens in that marriage? Having sex, exactly. So like having intimate physical intimacy, pretty much being part of the parcel. Yes. Oh, was there more? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, well, the whole we have this in, that's why we can take something that is obviously a very physical
Yeah.
love poem like the Song of Songs and make it a metaphor
Mm-hmm.
for God and the soul or for God and Israel.
Mm-hmm.
In exactly the same way that our Christian friends in the 16th and 17th century wrote very complicated music.
Mm-hmm.
With very, very banal lyrics about Jesus and the soul.
Mm.
Jesus is the bridegroom and the soul is the bride. And Fox very worse lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a common thing, and after all, God has a perfect relationship with the man,
Mm-hmm.
or the human being,
Yeah.
Adam. Adam was alone. And then God looked down at this and said, well, in fact, this isn't good for Adam being alone. Get him a partner.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently this was all part of God's plan.
There was a lot here, just trying to get the main pieces. So pretty much, what we're saying is there's like this yearning for a partner, something that has been there the whole time, going back to all the way to Adam and Eve. Also like God seeing it's not good for this Adam to be alone, to give Adam a partner along the way, and also the way how other texts have been really read very steamy, very physical, very intimate, like the Song of Songs, for example. That's the love of between two partners, and taking that to a spiritual level. So in the Jewish tradition, that's God and Israel, pretty much the two lovers ultimately. And you compared it also like how this being read differently in other traditions like Christianity, between Jesus and the soul, or like between Jesus and the church. I've heard both kind of approaches. So ultimately, that the physical and the spiritual and emotional are actually very close, and there's a lot of tradition and history on that part. I see hand, Nina. Mm-hmm. Mm. I like the term like in Judaism. It's a very embodied experience. I like that piece. This is literally what this piece is. So we have Judaism has always had that very hands on. I just noticed what it said. Yeah. Anyway, we had a very practical, very concrete way of going about the world. Yes, and it's actually perfectly fine of doing so. There are other traditions where the asceticism again. Maggie Smith, Mother Superior, like the sternness comes in. So going back to that, but at the same time also having that balance as we learned, not one extreme versus the other. Very good. So pretty much saying ultimately, this whole like striving there needs to come from this yearning, from this desire. But ultimately, is pretty much what do we do with this desire that makes the difference in how we go about that. Let's look some more on this. The next one here is from Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer, the Baal Shem Tov. This is 18th century Poland, and he elaborates further on this in this direction. The Baal Shem Tov comments on the verse, "Taste and see how good God is," from the Psalms, as follows. In all food and drink, there is sweetness and good taste and spiritual pleasure. Certainly this taste and pleasure is taken from the world of pleasure and is corporealized in the corporeal taste and pleasure in the food and drink. And if so, from this proof, one learns that at the time of eating and the experience of the corporeal pleasure, one should cleave oneself to that which is the pleasure of all pleasures. And this is what is said, taste and see how good God is. So we have another midrashic kind of explanation here. We take a verse from the Bible, and then ultimately pretty much hook up your interpretation on top of that. So we're talking about this verse from Psalm, taste and see how good God is, which first of all seems to be talking about food or some kind of way. Taste is a very corporeal way as well. So what is it ultimately that these engaging like in the physical world? What is it ultimately to do supposed to do to us according to him? To the Baal Shem Tov, yeah. Yes, Matt.
I can't think of a better way to feel connected to the world and God
Mm-hmm.
than
Oh, okay, all right. Very Jewish answer. No, what better way, to be connected to God in the world, except for food, So very good. I like it.
everything it takes to make that whatever you have in front
Yeah.
of you, you're going to put in your mouth,
Mm-hmm.
appear on your plate from all over the world and all the people that are involved in touching it and all of
Mm-hmm.
the worldly effort that goes into
Ah.
that in front of you is very powerful. And to think if you're just living off the land,
Mm-hmm.
parsing your own food, that is rich work.
Wonderful. Beautiful reading. I like this. So what he was summarizing is not only when we're eating something or enjoying something physical like food and drink in the world, to also be mindful of how that food came about. All the people that were involved in producing the food. Grateful also being to God. Brought the food from the earth. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, we say all the time. To pretty much to see the bigger picture. It's not just to stuff your face at the time. It's literally also to open up the view on all that have been a part of this. And in Judaism, again, brachot, the blessings that we say, are also like, a means and way of doing that to really remind ourselves where's this coming from. It's not just something that pops up there and, go for it, but ultimately it has quite a story. Beautiful, I like this. Yes, Aaron.
So, and to add to that, I think the other thing we have to think about food is the cultivation that occurred through history on a lot of things we eat. That apple is not like the original. That watermelon was not that sweet. But we've been able to cultivate it into this sweet. It was not. They don't even think it was red. It was probably white. Carrots were not orange. The Dutch loved orange. They created orange carrots. Just this cultivation that we've had. So God created and gave us this. But we've also been able to cultivate these things to make them more nutritious. But it's hard to have even a better desire of, I really like orange carrots. I'm gonna make orange.
Beautiful. So pretty much, he summarized pretty much how far also we have come in the way of producing food. From like no nutrition level or less appealing kind of a food. How pretty much over the centuries and millennia was possible for human beings to really improve on that. Not only the nutritional value, but also the aesthetics of that. I mentioned the example of an apple. That started off white. Historically, but actually got groomed to be this nice, shiny red, juicy kind of fruit that everybody's looking for. The same for carrots. I didn't know that either. Like apparently the Dutch grew carrots actually that were orange. Carrots didn't used to be orange. I didn't know that one. Okay. So ultimately, pretty much also there's a human component in all that. We mentioned already the people who produce the food. Very often it's like us human beings are like partners with God in fulfilling the work of creation. The idea is like, if we weren't partners on that, you would have, the food, like, whatever, there'd be spaghetti growing on a tree right there, like for pre-dish, but now there's there's great, you still need to, there's grain coming for, but you still need to harvest the grain, you need to, winnow and, and separate the seeds, you need to grind it and you make flour and bake it. So symbolically, we are still, as humans, have an active part in the world of creation and how we go about in the world. So it's not everything that's us being sent to us, and we have no part in it. And also, it's interesting the imagery that he's using sounds like very almost like from Greek philosophy, like very Platonic here. It's taken from the world of pleasure, it's almost like the world of ideas, that Plato and Socrates are talking about. So ultimately, what we have in the world here is pretty much a manifestation, of some spiritual realm. Is ultimately what he's saying. So this is our way, our threshold to connecting with something that is bigger than ourselves. All right, there's a lot of classical commentaries. The next one piece that I have here is actually from a book called "The Story of Stuff." So this is a contemporary text about what are things like in our day today. Each of us in the U.S. is targeted with more than 3,000 advertisements a day. We each see more advertisements in 1 year than a person 50 years ago saw in a lifetime. And if you think about it, what is the point of an ad except to make us unhappy with what we have? So 3,000 times a day, we are told our hair is wrong, our skin is wrong, our clothes are wrong, our furniture is wrong, our cars are wrong, but that it can all be made right if we just go shopping. Advertising must mass produce customers just as factories mass produce products in a growing economy, stated in the publisher of Printers Inc. and Packard, The Commodization of American Life in The Waste Makers. That was actually really pretty shocking, like kind of number that when I read this the first time, I was like, oh my god, there's a lot of ads out there, but number one, 3,000, that's a lot. I think with internet and what's pops on social media pieces, I think it might be even higher at this point. This is already a few years old, and we kind of take it for granted because that's kind of what we grew up with. Like, but say like a person 50 years ago, maybe had some billboards here, or maybe like in the paper, that kind of piece. So it's really interesting how that kind of really took off, and also what does it say and reflect about our society today? So what ultimately is it that ads and this whole campaigning is ultimately supposed to do with us or create in us? Yeah, Nina. Oh, please go. Mm-hmm. Mm. Oh no, this is a very good point. So what Nina was mentioning is pretty much in how far Judaism is already like a countercultural movement towards all these things. We have this tradition saying like every person is supposed to say like 100 blessings a day, to actually show our gratitude and be aware and grateful for the things that are happening around us. So very good. So pretty much this already like if we were to make use of that, already being some included like technique, a certain way of going against that kind of consumerism and getting lost only, in all these the desires and wants, and ultimately the idea unhappiness. So pretty much that trying to be the ads are supposed to create unhappiness in us, so that we try to fulfill ourselves or complete ourselves by buying these other things. If I get this, then I must be becoming as beautiful as that person there, or then I'm gonna be as happy as the people in that image, that kind of piece, So very good, very good. I like that one. Yes, Herb.
I just want to point out that human nature is not quite as malleable as advertising solutions. As somebody does remember what ads were like and how people reacted
Yeah.
60 years ago. There's a reason why we are exposed to this constant flow of ads, why it gets cheaper and cheaper per eyeball
Mm-hmm.
to advertise, because they don't work.
Okay. All right.
We don't care anymore. We will keep a car until it ceases to work. Remember when people bought cars every 2 years? They have to. Sometimes they did.
Interesting.
But things, people are become more and more resistant to ads. In when they hardly think of the old East Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody listened to these Western ads on
Mm.
TV. They went out and bought whatever there was being advertised.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Intershop was.
Yep.
Whatever was being advertised on Western TV, they could keep it on the shelf. Nobody in the West paid that much attention to the ads because they were drowning in them.
What's interesting, that part is again like if you can't have it, or it's really like a piece like makes it even like harder for that kind of an item and stuff,
We
Yeah.
don't pay any attention.
Ah.
Which is nuisance to us trying to get
Mm.
to the meat of the ad.
Mm.
We're trying to read on the
Yeah.
internet. We have all this garbage.
Oh yeah.
We finally get sick of it. We stop reading the website.
No, very good. So what Herb is raising is the question of the effectiveness of ads, and pretty much how kind of people have really become a lot more, so overwhelmed by it that they pretty much don't really pay any attention anymore. And that's also why I mentioned that's becoming a lot cheaper, like for ads, because the effectiveness is no longer there. As he mentioned, like earlier in his life, when literally it had a lot more effect. Also, like people always getting the newest car, the newest version of it. I don't know some folks who the new iPhone is out. I need to get that kind of piece, and that's only been like a year or two or something like that. So it's like a mixed piece, but ultimately you're absolutely right. It's become so overwhelming, overwhelming that at times our brains, also need to pretty much sift through and automatically tune out some of them, going through a website to almost immediately try to find the actual core. If there's too many ads or too much stuff, like this is just leaving the page, because it's just like a way of pretty much we feel strung along. So it's pretty much it's like, okay, are they kidding us? What is happening here? So that's what I heard from your comment. Yes. Oh yeah, David.
The Wall Street Journal, they said
Yeah.
3% is considered successful. So if you hand out 100 flyers,
Yeah.
if 3 people respond, then you have actually been successful in your
Interesting.
advertising quota.
Just quoted like a study from the Wall Street Journal that when you have like a flyer campaign that you're going out, if you give out 100 flyers, if 3%, like 3 flyers of those actually are successful in creating some business, that's a good way of doing it. So already seeing pretty much 97% is pretty much just waste paper in a sense, that kind of piece. So literally pretty much how we have literally become numb to all that is out there. Now the question is, so why is it? Is it literally like, it's like, okay, we're seeing through, all the manipulation, or is it more like, just we can't deal anymore and kind of stuff, like, yeah, we don't really care and stuff? That would be like the next question I would have. Yes.
There's many ads where I have taken part in that ad,
Mm-hmm.
particularly travel, and it's like a riverboat they advertise,
Mm-hmm.
and they have aerial views of everywhere that
Mm-hmm.
they go. And I know that you don't see these things because they look so much better. But aerial riverboat, you've never looked, you've never had a helicopter above or a small plane to show you, and then you start dissecting. Is this real?
Mm-hmm.
Is this trying to just sell? And many times they're trying to just sell whether, it's not real.
It's very good. The point she was raising. At times, ads have become like so sophisticated that sometimes the ad sometimes looks better than reality. Mention like an ad for a riverboat cruising where they're taking helicopter shots from everything else. Like when you actually were to go on a cruise, you would not get these gorgeous shots. So something is wrong here. What is happening here? So I like that one a lot. So ultimately, literally, the more we get of it, the more it's like, the more are we actually becoming aware of there's some manipulation going on. This is just like a tool to sell, to try to get people to engage us there. Going back into back to like the first part, this will pretty much they're sending out a lot of messengers, not from the king this time, but ultimately trying to like keep you from the ultimate source here, if you want to go with these terms here. Going back to Rabbi Dov Ber in the next text that I have here. So what are we supposed to do with all this? This is what's happening. How can we find a way in our lives for this? Serve God with all your might. God wishes to be served in all possible ways. This means the following. Sometimes one may walk and talk to others and then is unable to study Torah. Nonetheless, you shall attach yourself to God. So also, when on the road, thus unable to pray and study as usual, you shall serve God in other ways. Do not be disturbed by this, for God wishes to be served in all possible ways, sometimes in one manner and sometimes in another. That is why it happened that you had to go on a journey or talk to people, so that you serve God in that alternate way. First time I read this, is like, wow, this was actually really impressive. What is it that he's telling? How is it ultimately, if we want to try to, come back to the king? How we actually supposed to engage and live our lives in a Jewish positive way? What are the options that he proposes, which might surprise some of us? Nina. Be creative about it, yes. Also, saying there is not one way. There's not one way of doing it. Very often we had a discussion with somebody the other day. I feel like such a bad Jew. I'm not doing these discussions. We had that earlier Torah study, this morning, and literally not only how much judgment is included in comments like those, and also how are you comparing yourself to somebody else's image of what's going on there, as if there's like one way, and set way of going about doing things. And I think also we had a conversation last night on this piece as well. So it's really interesting how often this pops up in our lives. These are just what literally like the last 24 hours come in my mind. Yes, Matt, I see a hand.
It does remind me of speaking of being creative. Nina and I decided to walk from Seattle to get a sandwich.
Wow.
Across Vashon Island.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want to miss Torah study, so have multiple pictures of her walking behind me about 15 feet with on the phone.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it.
Different world.
Another way I was thinking of is that we always have to make a point to have a bag in our car that
That's beautiful, you guys. Ma- ah. Ah. So Matt and Nina, but we're sharing some of the ways we can actually use like an alternative ways of sharing that. They were heading to Seattle at one point to get a sandwich, you know, and literally like to traveling there via Vashon Island, and even there, like one time of Torah study, to have a commentary with you and still engaging in that part. Also, to having some food in the car to actually see somebody who's like in need or can use something to actually share that with you and actually have like, you know, if you're going about your everyday life, still having a way of engaging the world. So these are really beautiful ways. Thanks for sharing. Yes. Everywhere there's a way to make a way. Ah, every way is a way if you make it a way. A quote from the principal of a high school. I think really that's a beautiful one, and also it's very empowering. It pretty much, you know, where there's in German there's a wo ein Wille ist, ist auch ein Weg. You know, where there's a will, there's a way. It's very much to say the same idea. So it ultimately comes back to our attitude. What is it that we really want to make happen? You know, about in the world. Beautiful. I like this. And also, what I like about this quote is it opens it up for a multiplicity of ways of doing it. There's not like one way. It's like, you know, I don't pray enough. You know, I don't do certain, like, you know, seemingly more superficial ways of engaging Jewishly, but ultimately to find something that is meaningful to you and to grow and to go from there, from that part, which I think is a very empowering statement here. And echoing up on this, the last quote that I have here is Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen once more of Lublin. Every person has a special passion, and that thing in which his or her passion and desire is most ardent, they are receptacle to receive God's blessing. They return it to God with all their heart, recognizing that God placed the passion in them. That was a very powerful statement as well. That each of us pretty much have our special gift that we are bringing into the world, and to share that with others, and ultimately, pretty much our task in the world is pretty much to find out what is our gift, what are the things that we're really good at, the things that we really enjoy, and where we're most passionate about it. Remember, we spoke about earlier, like, you know, how important the passion element is in some of the Kabbalistic text, because ultimately that's what drives us in the world and gives us that oomph, that zest, you know, and to actually go about it. So, and ultimately the idea of returning this gift with God with all the heart, because God placed the passion there. So we are coming full circle again to the King. So ultimately, our job in the world is to find that gift. What is it that we can do and bring to others, and how can we engage and make this world happier and better place? And with this, I want to close. Thanks so much for your participation and the lively discussion. Really appreciate it. Also looking forward to reading the commentaries afterwards. So thanks also for sharing those as well. And as we enter into this high holiday season, to really get us into the mindset, to take a pause, letting pretty much all the distractions that are coming out there, to put those aside, and really looking back, ultimately, how can we connect back to what is really important, and ultimately make our way back to the King from our initial part. So, all right, Shabbat Shalom. We are, I think, almost also it's getting darker here, so we're almost reaching Havdalah time, which is actually really wonderful time of transition that we have. And so in a moment, we're about to engage with Havdalah.
as Rabbi TV gets prepared, he's just putting on his talit over there. I'd like to invite you, if you would like, to maybe come a little closer to the table. We can't go right around the table, but it would be nice to just sort of connect more so as we sing together. We're going to start right at the beginning in our booklets. There's a reading, and then we'll have Havdalah.
Havdalah, separation. Holy and ordinary, light and darkness. Israel and the other nations. Shabbat and the 6 days of creation. Blessing and curse, life and death. 1 year from another year. Each needs the other. Each responds to the other. Each is empowered by the other. As we move from Kodesh L'chol, from the holiness of Shabbat to the ordinariness of the weekday, may the sweetness of Shabbat bleed over into the 6 days of creation, so that these days bring us closer to redemption.
I invite you to sway and to sing and to celebrate as we join together. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam orei meorei yamim borei la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meorei ha'esh borei meorei ha'esh la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh lechol hamavdil ben kodesh lechol ben or lechoshech ben yom hashvi'i לששת ימי המעשר ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לחול. המבדיל בין קודש לחול, חטאותינו ימחול, זרענו וכספנו יבק החול, והכוכבים בלילה. שבוע טוב, 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 שבוע טוב. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhera v'yamenu, Yavo Eleinu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. Shavua Tov. And we continue. Shavua Tov, a good week. This week is not like other weeks. It is the last week of the Jewish year. It is the last week of the month of Elul. It is the last chance we have to prepare ourselves for the new year. It is the last opportunity to begin teshuvah, to begin to return. We join together and return again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to what you are, return to who you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again, return again, return again, return to the land of your soul.
This is why the new year comes to us, to remind us that our world and its people, you and I, need desperately to be made whole. Our world needs committed Jews. It needs troubled people, men and women who care, men and women who are not ashamed to be sensitive and tender. It needs those who are willing to become members of a community dedicated to each other's fulfillment, aware that without such a community, it will be impossible to fulfill our own humanity. Our world needs men and women who have the courage to be afraid of all the forces which have removed our humanity, which have cut us off from the unity which is humankind, the creation we were forced to guard, and the God whose spirit has made us human. It is to such a challenge that the new year comes in all its morning brightness, in all its persistent hope. On the left side of the page, we read responsively. Now is the time for turning. The leaves are beginning to turn from green to red and orange.
The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once again more toward the south. The animals are beginning to turn to storing their food for winter.
For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively. But for us, turning does not come so easily.
It takes an act of will for us to make a turn.
It means breaking with old habits. It means admitting that we have been wrong, and this is never easy.
It means losing face. It means starting all over again, and this is always painful.
It means saying, I'm sorry. It means admitting that we have the ability to change, and this is always embarrassing.
These things are terribly hard to do, but unless we turn, we will be trapped forever in yesterday's ways.
God, help us turn from carelessness to sensitivity.
From carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith.
Turn us around, O God, and bring us back towards you. Revive our lives as in the beginning.
And turn us towards each other, O God, for in isolation there is no life. The tree trimmer. Dangling from a leather sling in the oak, the tree trimmer high in the swaying tree reaches out to saw away a branch. It leaves a staring eye when it drops, a round white eye on the tree trunk. Cautiously with rope and saw, tools swinging from his belt, he crawls upward, seeking limbs to cut. Now I too slash away unnecessary branches, opening eyes to the sky. Imperiled, dangling, lacking skill to choose the limbs that stifle growth, I pray to you, whose marks I bear within like rings of trees. I pray you guide my hand, I, the tree trimmer, I, the tree.
Here now by Storm Jameson. It would appear that only one person in 1,000 knows the trick of really living in the present. Most of us spend 59 minutes living in the past, with regret for lost joys, or shame for things badly done, both utterly senseless and weakening, or in a future which we either long for or dread. Yet the past is gone beyond prayer, and every minute we spend in the vain effort to anticipate the future is a moment lost. There's only one world, the world pressing against us at this minute. There's only 1 minute in which we are alive, this minute, here and now. The only way to live is by accepting each minute as an unrepeatable miracle, which is exactly what it is, a miracle and unrepeatable.
We join together in this round of Hashivenu. Return us to you, and we will return. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, V'nashua, V'nashua, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha,
I'm sorry, Bari Rabbi Hillel Silverman. I'm sorry
for offending people and then being hurt that they're offended and not caring or hoping quite enough to go and say, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
For forgetting the kind things and remembering the cruel things.
I'm sorry.
For being angry at the wrong time and not at the right time.
I'm sorry.
for holding grudges and hugging bitterness,
I'm sorry.
for neglecting my friend who needs affection,
I'm sorry.
for not consulting my colleague who needs understanding,
I'm sorry.
for being critical of my child who needs appreciation,
I'm sorry.
for being sorry for myself who needs love.
Take a few moments now to think about and reflect on some of the things that we are sorry for and how we might improve on them in the future. On the next page, responsive reading of Huya Nenu, Answer Us by Rachel Adler. The one who answered Abraham at Moriah will answer us.
The one who answered Sarah and made her laugh will answer us.
The one who answered Isaac on the altar will all answer us.
The one who answered Rachel and Leah will answer us.
The one who answered Miriam on the Nile will answer us.
The one who answered Israel on the Red Sea will answer us.
The one who answered Moses on Sinai will answer us.
The one who answered Hannah in Shiloh will answer us.
The one who answered David in Jerusalem will answer us.
The one who answered Elijah in a still, small voice will answer us.
The one who answered Esther in Shushan will answer us.
The one who answered those who seek will answer us. We join in Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masim. Asei manu, tzedakah chesed. Asei manu, tzedakah chesed, ve'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masim.
Return by Ruth Bryn. Return, O Israel, to Adonai your God, for you have fallen because of your sin. Return as the shrill sound of the shofar that rises from the spiral of the ram's horn toward heaven. Take words with you and return to Adonai. Return as an eagle flies in the mounting spiral to its mountain nest, swift and sure. I will be to Israel like dew, he will blossom like the lily. Return as the leaves in spring, renewed and beautiful. I fell in love with Israel, when he was still a child, and I have called him my son ever since Egypt. I have pampered Ephraim, taking them in my arms. Stretch out your arms to God and return, like a child to a mother, to love and peace.
It is told of Rabbi Israel Salanter that one late night he was panning through a main street where a cobbler of his acquaintance lived. He noticed through the window that the candle that gave the shoemaker light was flickering and would soon go out. Rabbi Israel entered the cobbler's hut and said to him, "My friend, why do you sit up so late? You worked all day long. The candlelight is almost out. It is in its last flickering. Isn't it better for you to go to bed and rest?" "Well, Rabbi," responded the shoemaker, "as long as there is light in the candle, I can still do some mending." Rabbi Israel then, as the story goes, kept on repeating, "As long as the light of life is burning, one still has time to mend one's ways."
As we prepare for the new year, we're about to change our Torah mantles, replacing the one we use throughout the year with the one that is white. White is a symbol of purity. Isaiah taught, "Come now, let us reason together," says God. "Though your sins are like scarlet, they will become white as snow. If they have become red as crimson, they will become white as wool." White reflects and scatters all the invisible wavelengths of light. Some wear the white kittel on Yom Kippur, symbolic of purity. As we change our Torah mantle, may we be inspired to make the changes in our lives to make us whole.
Joel's going to help you. You can rise if you'd like. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to what you are, return to who you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul.
Rabbi Susitz of Hanipol taught, there are 5 verses in the Tanakh that constitute the essence of Judaism. These verses begin with the letters Tav, Shin, Vav, Beit, Hey, which comprise the word Teshuvah, repentance.
And we read those together. "You must be wholehearted with the eternal, your God. I have set the eternal always before me. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. In all your ways know the eternal. Humbly walk with your God. Live these teachings," Rabbi Zusia said, "and your repentance will be sincere."
It is never the last word has not been spoken. The last sentence has not been written. The final verdict is not in. It is never too late to change my mind, my direction, to say no to the past and yes to the future, to offer remorse, to ask and give forgiveness. It is never too late to start over again, to feel again, to love again, to hope again. Cry no more for the sins of the past. Rejoice in your repentance and your return. For this is the day that God made, to lift you up from your sorrow and shame, to deliver you to the gates of righteousness.
Remember this: love is the crown of your life, and wisdom the rock on which you stand. Charity is your staff, and justice your shield. Your deeds declare your kindness, and your works declare your devotion.
Cry no more for your fears and your dread. Rejoice in your blessings and your healing. For this is the day that God made, to raise your countenance in hope, to deliver you to the gates of holiness.
May the sound of the shofar alarm us, awaken us, arouse us to take the first step to return.
To call up our Baal Tekiah, our shofar sounder for the season, David Aqua, for Tekiah Gedolah, one long blast as we're entering into the days of awe.
I invite you to rise and also to take this moment to perhaps close your eyes to hear the power of this single note this evening. Tekiah Gedolah.
Everybody, thanks for coming. You have a Shavua Tov, and maybe enter together in a meaningful high holiday season. Looking forward to seeing you again. And there's one more Shabbat before that, before Rosh Hashanah. Looking forward to seeing you for this one as well. Toda Rabah to everybody. Thanks to everybody who had a part in the service. Cantor and Joel for leading together beautifully and singing. To David for sounding the shofar. Our tech team, our president Aaron Peterson, and Junior here as well. Family business helping us out with tech. To our security team, Sean Bethel and Manny Espinoza, thank you as well. And everybody who helped with handing out and setting up here for the night.
And
Thanks,
to our
everybody.
rabbi for a beautiful Torah discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shavua Tov, everybody.
Shavua Tov.
Have a wonderful week. See you around. And to also for those folks at home, thanks for tuning in.